So our job is to help you do a data detox and just, reduce the amount of data that is out there about you, but you decide. This is the important part.
Gal Ringel, thank you so much for being on my show. How are you? Good morning.
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for taking time to do this. There's a lot to talk about. I've been following for a while and I'm a big fan. I'd love to spend our 20 minutes talking about your journey from a technologist to investment to business world, now to CEO, talking about that non-linear career pathway that comes up so much from thought leaders like yourself on the show. And then I would also love to talk a little bit about the most recent Series A investment that you raised completely through Zoom. So we have a lot to cover, but let's go all the way back. Gal Ringel, who are you?
So I'd love to share a few words. I mean, I think I'm biased, but I think I have a really diverse and I would call it a strange career. So it's all started like 25 something years ago when I was 8 years old, where I started to write code and hack stuff. Yes, I know it's in a really young age, but this is what got me eventually to draft to the 8200 units in the Israeli army. I'm sure you're probably familiar with that unit, right?
Yes, yes, I got to be
Okay,
there
lovely. So
myself. But tell me, how did you get to start coding at 8 years old? How does that even happen?
I'm a gamer. I used
Okay.
to play Counter Strike back in the days, and actually this got me to land my first job in one of the leading gaming companies in Israel. We actually did LAN parties in back in the days where people brought their computers and big screens,
Yeah.
and I was basically in charge of running all the networks and all the servers. So this is how I learned networks and routers and even to code some of the things on the Counter Strike servers. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, it's a really bizarre story, but yeah, this is how I got to the coding world, and this is what developed later on to start hacking stuff
So now,
in my
when
free
when
time.
you're saying hacking stuff, give me a little bit of context because when I'm imagining an 8 year old hacking stuff, that doesn't really add up in my mind. What does that actually mean to you?
So I'm talking about around the age of 12, not 8.
Okay.
This is where I started to hack stuff, and I'm talking about security hacking. So back in the days when the internet started, the internet didn't have any security, proper security in place. So I started to test my skills. I don't know if you remember, but once we were downloading things to FTP servers
Yeah.
before torrents and that world. So I started to hack stuff and train my skills. Um, yeah, so this is how it started.
Wow. Okay, so you're 12 years old. You're into gaming. You're into hacking and coding. You get into the 8200 unit. You spend a few years as a captain, right, in that unit. So you're really honing your technology skills, both in terms of leading teams, but also hands-on learning. And then you make this interesting quick transition to the business world. So again, on that non-linear career pathway, how do you find yourself then going into investments? And I believe you were in Verizon, right? And you were an investment principal in various places. How do you get there?
So it's a really good story. I mean, after 10 years of hands-on developing or dealing with technology, I just woke up one day and decided that I want to change something in my career path. I was really good in technology, but I didn't want to take that to the next level and be a VP R&D or a CTO. I decided I want to take my tech skills and leverage that on the business side. But as you mentioned, I had to go study that
Yeah.
somehow. So I had my first computer science degree, but I didn't want to go and do MBA back then. So Yeah, so I joined. So I found myself joining the venture capital community. I started with Nielsen, the market research company, for 2 years doing early stage investments, and then I moved on to Verizon Ventures, as you mentioned, doing later stage investments. And I think what was so special about that 4.5 years is that I had a really amazing chance to get a glimpse into the startup ecosystem by investing in early stage, and stage companies, and to learn business skills, product marketing, hiring. I sat in board meetings, and eventually in 4.5 years I had the chance to invest in 20 companies. So I
Wow.
saw them developing and advancing from the very early stage to the very growth stage. And I
Right.
think for me it was an amazing experience to acquire a lot of skill set that I'm using, that I'm putting into action right now. um,
So you pretty much created your own form of MBA, right? It's a really interesting path that you spend quite a few years in technology. It's not like 1 or 2 years, right? It's many years in technology. You reach a certain level where you're comfortable enough to go and execute on a lot of these issues, but then you find yourself in a fork in the road where you have to decide: am I going to be a VP R&D slash CTO, or do I actually want to be on the business side of things and know how to actually run a company? And then you decide to go into the investment field, and now most recently you're running your own startup. So tell me now about that, because first of all, I love what you're doing with mine. I think that the story of how you raise the money now is fascinating. But tell me a little bit about how you moved from VC to creating a startup.
So after 4.5 years doing investment deals, I practically decided that I'm ready to go back and do what I'm really passionate about, which to start my own company. And so I grabbed my two friends. One of them, our CTO Gal Golan, who and I served together in the 80 to 100 unit, and we're good friends for 6 years. He was actually my trainer, so everything that I know in my cybersecurity side is thanks to him. And the third co-founder is Kobe Nissan, who I met during my VC career. He worked at Saban Ventures. And when the three of us sat together, we knew that we want to solve something that is very painful for us personally. And after a few meetings, we quickly discovered that the three of us really understands personal data and how valuable and precious is it to each one of us on the personal level. But we quickly
Right.
realized that three of us dealt with personal data of different people from all kind of different angles through
Sure.
our career. And we quickly realized that we know how easily our personal data can be exploited exploited against us as people. And this is how we thought about mine. We knew that we want to bring a consumer product that can help people understand what companies are doing with their data, but not only that, to take an action and to do something about it. And I'm talking about the end of 2017, where the
Oh,
GDPR
wow.
was legislated. Um, and
Yeah.
as VC, we started to research that, and we quickly identified that the GDPR has made an history in the internet or changed the history of the internet, because it actually defined our personal data as our own asset, and it gave us powerful rights. But here is a funny story. We knew that that regulation wouldn't be used by people because it's very hard and complex. So to prove that, we went all around Europe asking people in the street, like we grabbed people in the street and asked them whether they heard about the GDPR, and whether they exercised any of their rights. And can you guess what was the answer?
100% no. What is
Exactly. All they
GDPR?
heard. Yeah, so most of them did hear about it because all they saw was the freaking cookie consent everywhere in every site, right? Where
Right.
you need to allow all the time. But none of them could actually try to exercise his rights. Some of them did try, like a small portion said that they did
Right.
want to try, but it was very complex. So this is how we knew that we have to make it accessible to millions of people, because it's a very powerful right. And this is how mine started.
Right. So give me a little bit of context for those who don't still understand the magnitude of the problem of private data and personal data. What is the trend, and how compromised is our personal data in 2020?
So it's a very good question. So data privacy or data protection in 2021, we believe that the entire market has shifted from privacy into what we identified as a data ownership. And
Right.
and why do I say that? If you think about privacy, if we wanted to protect our privacy, we had to prevent from our personal data to be shared with others, right? To install a VPN or to use a
Sure.
dedicated browser, but all of those solutions actually change our online experience, right? If you use a VPN to log into your bank account, you would immediately get blocked, right? So it actually changing our online experience. So we wanted to design a product that blends into your day to day and doesn't change any of your behavior. I mean, we want to sign up to services, we want to purchase things online, we want to give our data, but we identify that the problem is to manage our data on an ongoing basis. And just to give you one interesting insight, can you guess how many companies hold the average user's data? And I'm talking about companies that have actively collected your data from signups, purchases, things that you're doing on your day to day, not passively collected.
How many companies have that? That's a question.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, as a developer myself, I would imagine that at least 90% of the companies that I'm actively seeing in my day to day have a lot of personal information about me.
So we actually have the number. So the worldwide average digital footprint consists of 350 companies. So it's
350 companies.
350 companies
Wow.
that holding your sensitive data. It can be email plus any other thing, passport,
Wow.
social security number, date of birth. And in the US, by the way, it's even higher. It's 550. So
So
going back to your
550 companies. Wow. Okay. That's just scary.
yeah, So going back to your original question, we quickly identified that the problem is managing our data on an ongoing basis and
Sure.
how we can make sure to leave our data only where we actually still using it. And this
Right.
is and this is why we developed mine. So mine in very short is a smart data assistant that blends into your day to day and allows you to always know where your data is and who has what about you. And then, with
Now,
the click
Gal, I
of a
do want to
button, we
make a
give.
distinction. It's important for me to make a distinction here because I think that it almost feels like the world is now split into two types of people. There's the people that love the fact that their data is being shared and it's being used by services, and then there's the other people that feel like, okay, we're losing our privacy. Companies are gonna misuse the data, and obviously, I think we can both agree that it's somewhere in the middle, right? We want to enjoy having services leverage their knowledge about me so that they can personalize my experience, whether it's offering me sharing rides to my workplace or what is the next good purchase for me. Obviously, there's the misuse of data, right? So getting, for example, my election, my voting habits to advertise for campaigns. Now, I think that what you're doing here is what I love about what you're doing is you're taking back control over choosing where do I want my data to be stored, right? It's not an all or nothing approach of I don't want my data to be shared anywhere. It's saying we understand that our data is going to be shared. I want to be able to control where it's going to be shared in the world, right?
Yes, and I'm so happy that you mentioned that because to give back control to users, we call it to bring you back the choice. And
Right,
what is so nice about our product is that, as you mentioned, the world today is a binary world. It's either we share our data or we don't. But what we wanted to
right,
do with mine is to give you the choice to decide. So the first phase is to basically understand who has what, right? This is the accessibility, the 350
right,
companies that most people don't have any idea. And after you do have that understanding, you have the choice to take it back, to take your data back, and this is the control that you mentioned,
right,
and give you all the data that you need, all the information in order to take an informed choice, and in order to understand what services you need to delete and what services you need to keep because
Sure.
you're either using them or trust them, but you have the choice. We are not deciding for you. But
Right.
we will be there to alert you all the time that is it's changing, because today you can use a service and in a few weeks you can stop using that. So
Yes.
why giving them the chance to keep holding your data, because every day there's a new data breach and a new privacy scandal. And you mentioned the election, so our job is to help you do a data detox and just reduce the amount of data that is out there about you, but you decide. This is the important part.
I think that's just remarkable, and we can talk about hours. We can talk about data for hours, and I think that what you're doing is insanely relevant. And I'm guessing that it's an exponential growth, the amount of data that is being stored on us, right? With every new platform that comes out, we're inventing new data types that are being shared about us. And I remember distinctly with Cambridge Analytica when the report came out in 2016, just how much knowledge they had on so many people, things, heuristics that the person never even shared. They never even necessarily shared with them what their favorite color is, but they use heuristics to think about that. But Gal, I have to spend a few minutes talking about your most recent Series A raise, because it's phenomenal to be able to do it. It's even more phenomenal to do it all over Zoom. So tell me what happened over there.
So this is a really interesting story because in the middle of it, somehow COVID started. But if I take you a few months back, so after we raised our seed round in early 2019, we worked for the entire year in stealth to develop our product. And when we felt it's ready to hit the market, we did our official launch in Europe, but also in Product Hunt. And we were very surprised by the amazing traction that we received in a very short period of time. We actually won the first place app of the day and week, and second place
Wow.
app of the month on Product Hunt. Yeah. And somehow it got a lot of attention back to us from investors. It turns out that a lot of investors are monitoring Product Hunt. And so we started to speak with a lot of investors, and I'm talking about the end of January this year. So I started to jump on calls with investors. I was not raising my Series A, just to share our story, right? To share the vision, what we're after, and to develop relationships with those investors. And then COVID arrived, and I'm talking about March 1st. COVID hit Europe hardly, right?
Yep.
And 3 weeks later, it hit the US as well. And I actually felt how the entire the entire worldwide VC community is like shut down or getting into a worldwide freeze. So similarly to us being locked down, right, in the first lockdown, I felt how the entire VC community got into a worldwide freeze because, and it's really understandable. Most of them had to assess their portfolio damages, right, and to quickly develop a plan to help the companies in need, right?
I have to
It
say
was
that
a new.
it was a very special time. I'm a senior associate in an early stage VC firm in Palo Alto, and I distinctly remember the confusion of what's unraveling. And here we are. We have active investments, we have LPs, we have money that is ready to be deployed into the market, and all of a sudden we think to ourselves, well, what is our responsibility here, and what do we do? And one of the things one of the key questions you start asking yourself is, well, how do we make sure that even like how long is this going to last? And assuming that our companies are not going to make any money until this thing ends, what is the runway that they have and how can we support them? And it was all a very confusing time. So I can only imagine from a startup's perspective, what does that mean to now potentially go into a Series A investment?
So you're very right, and luckily for me, I could play both sides, right? Because I came from the VC community, and now I'm doing my own thing, and I actually felt that. And
Right,
and you mentioned you also work in the VC, so you know the financial model behind VCs, and you
right.
probably know that VCs are raising funds for 9 years, right?
Yep.
So I quickly understand that COVID, even if it's going to last 2 years, it's a really small bump in the tail, right? It's not
Yep.
so hard for the VCs. So I just knew that we have to, hold down a little bit and give the VC some time to digest and to, develop the plan they need to save some of the companies, because some industries were really affected by COVID. For example, the travel
Sure.
industry. Uh, so we started speaking with those VCs, develop the relationship. We knew that we have to stay a little bit, to give them enough time to develop their own strategies. But as you
Right.
saw, most VC were quickly back in business, right? I
Sure.
guess it took what, 3 months. Uh,
Yeah.
Luckily
And
for
and yeah,
us, and luckily for us, the COVID was actually increased the need for data privacy and data protection. You probably heard about contact tracing, location tracing. So
a
privacy
hundred
was
percent.
again, yeah, so privacy was again in the major news, and it was really good for us. And one of the investors that we were talking to, Gradient Ventures, we had like monthly update calls during that period of time. And around June, we were lucky enough to, even around May, we were lucky enough to get a term sheet, and around June to close the entire round
Everything through
completely.
Zoom.
Everything through Zoom, start to finish. The leading partner, Darian Shirazi, he never met us in person, and we had another two VCs, one from Germany and another CVC from the US, Mass Mutual and E Ventures. They never met us, and coming from a VC perspective, a VC background, I never thought that investment deals can be done remotely. You always have to feel the people and to meet them in person. There's something in the vibe, in like feeling them,
Yep.
on
A
their
hundred
flesh.
percent.
Uh, so it was a really interesting experience to me. I guess COVID taught us that we need to do business remotely. We have to, because the world have to keep moving on. And I guess I experienced that firsthand. It was a
I
really
think it's
interesting experience for me.
I don't know if there will ever be a time again where deals of this magnitude will be made entirely through Zoom. I can't imagine a society where people deploy millions of dollars without wanting to meet the other person in person. But Gal, I thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing with mine. Thank you for everything that you taught me through this 20 minute leaders. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to continue following the company and your journey. It sounds really, really amazing. But before we leave, I have to ask you for three words that you would use to describe yourself.
Wow, it's a challenging one. I would say calm. It's the first
Okay.
one. Uh, Maybe fearless. This is something that the 80 to 100. This is something that the
Yep.
80 to 100 unit does, to just that you can do anything that you want. And I would say something that would surprise some people, but funny. So I guess that people that know me personally would say that. So yeah, so calm, fearless,
Come
and
fearless
funny.
and funny. Gal, toda rabba. Thank you very, very much. Best of luck with everything that you're doing, and I can't wait to keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I really invite you all to join saymind.com and just take ownership of your personal data, and really do something for the first time.
I love it. Gal, toda rabba. Bye bye.